Three.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is an episode of Free Therapy. We are back after a month, and I want to get right into it as always today because we have a return guest. I am absolutely honored to have him in the studio. I'm absolutely honored that he's put up with me for these last 5 years, as I can often be a kid that jumps in a barrel, goes down that 5 rapid river, and somehow still makes it out. And Brendan's always been there down at the bottom of the river. That's right, Brenden, sharper than the average kid, sharper than the average man. Obviously, I think, as I've said on the show before, and he always says it's a lot to live up to, I don't think it is. The sharpest person I know, and I'm honored to have the suave, the calm, the even keel, always ready to kill, Brenden Lewis on the show. Future net worth probably over a B. How you doing, baby? Welcome back.
Thanks, man. Doing well. Can't complain.
Glad to hear it, man. I'm glad to hear it, and I'm glad to have you back on the show. I wanted to have you on the show for a very special reason. Just catch everybody up, though, that didn't hear you on the last podcast. I believe you're on the 3rd episode of Free Therapy, deep in season 2 now, if that is a thing, or we count seasons, whatever you want to call it. But tell the fans how we met, how you know me, how the friendship started.
So it was way back in the day, back in my swim coaching days. Met Joey when he came to the pavilion, working together, swim coaching, and I guess teaching lessons and what have you.
Always a joy, always a blast.
Great time, can't say I miss it.
It was character building for sure, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Character building for sure. But what really united us, and I got myself in trouble with somebody recently, as I told you, won't get too deep into that based on our last podcast, but I feel like it doesn't even really count. I think I dodged a bullet, and we won't give the people the details here. But what brought us together, the show does not get political, but was those kind of, for the most part, 90% of our conversation, political conversations, right? Or political debates, or something in the landscape of that. Whether it was a fiscal landscape of that, whether it was just how it was the foreign landscape of that, whatever the case may be, or just, an election in general. I think it kind of started in that 2016 election at the time and grew from there. And again, like I said, you've been putting up with me ever since.
That's probably an accurate representation. Not that many people that you can have political conversations with, so
I think
definitely good to have you.
I think that I appreciate that, man. I think one of the favorite things that you always said to me, and I couldn't agree with this more, and I reuse it and say it almost all the time, at least once a week, and that is this only way to move yourself forward is to have those kind of political and religious conversations. Whether something is, I think, affecting you mentally, especially as polarized as it can be now in that landscape, or whether it's just maybe not right on your forefront, but you feel like it's holding you back a little bit, or you feel like you're questioning this thing. I think it's good to always have those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. Having that outlet, I think, is pretty crucial. Whether that's somebody that you know in person or online or what have you, and I think some of that'll play into what we're talking about today. I think it's important for personal development and just for your own psyche to be able to voice your opinions and your concerns.
Well said, man. I mean, I agree completely. And that's why we're here today and why we're back, and you kind of alluded to it already, is something that I think kind of tackles all of that. And again, we're not going to get political. We're going to still kind of focus on what is the mental aspect of all this in the show. Is it is free therapy. By no means is our new, may have not heard this, but our new motto on the show is we are not experts. Please by all means reach out for help if you need help. But we're just some average people that are putting out our thoughts out there that are things that are normally difficult to talk about. So with that being said, man, this is something that I think is kind of been a looming theme on the show, Brenden, something that I think we even talked about a little bit on our last show, right? And I talk about it almost every single episode in one way or another, and that is social media. Social media, I think it's here, it's in our lives, it's here to stay, it's not going away by any means, right? So at this point, how do you I want to know, before we kind of get into the deep waters of it, and let's start very basic, as I like to do on this show, so we kind of slowly peel off the Band-Aid here. What's your personal experience like with social media? And what do you, if any, feel like there's any mental kind of impact it's had on you? And as I told you over text, I kind of think I know where you're going to go here.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with social media is pretty limited, honestly. I mean, when I was younger, in the high school days, a long time ago now, I used to be somewhat active on Facebook, but never had a Twitter, have an Instagram that I kind of sort of use every now and then if if it pops to mind that I should throw something on there.
I've definitely been suggested to follow Brenden Lewis once or twice.
Yeah, we should.
We'll see. Jury's still out.
Yeah, so I don't have a ton of experience on it just because it's not something that I've ever really engaged with. But I mean, I think there can be obvious, mental aspects to it or harmful mental aspects to it. I don't know. I think that the whole idea of it is that sort of validation. Having that validation from people you don't know, and I don't know, just being able to get anybody's opinion on yourself at any time can be beneficial, but can also obviously be dangerous. So.
I agree, man, and I think you hit on a key note there, and that is that that need for validation, because especially at a young age, because you luckily, I think you sound like you evaded it, and you are again you are a pretty even keel man. You are a strong-headed man in terms of you don't let most of that kind of stuff get to you. You are where you are for a reason, but. I think there are weaker-minded people, me, that kind of were affected by that a little bit mentally so, and I think I've gotten past it. But I remember, and this is kind of a specific story I wanted to share with you going into today. Weird story, okay? And I will admit, and I have admitted on this podcast before, that freshman, sophomore year, I had that need for approval, kind of that mental gate that everybody has when you're growing up, going through that puberty thing. You want to be that cool kid, you want da-da-da-da-da, right? There's always that in the back of your head for most kids. So I wanted that approval on that social media, and it was the killing for who's gonna be on the top 8, who's gonna be on my, who's gonna like all my pics on Facebook, did my crush like my pic on Facebook back, all that bullshit, right? And then I remember, this is where it gets twisted, this is where it gets a little different, this is where it gets very Joey, Brenden. You met a buddy of mine, Michael Donahue, before, and he went ahead and I got his password, and he let me do this one time just to check out, after I begged him to check out this girl I had a crush on Facebook. And the moment he gave me that password, and I was grounded or I couldn't get into my Facebook any longer, is the reason I asked him to, just to clarify. I missed that part of the story. Just to clarify, because I was a classic grounding. My mom didn't like me being on Facebook anymore. She changed the password, locked me out of it, okay? So, flashback forward, we go ahead, and now we see me using this Facebook every single day. And I'm going, and it starts this, looking after this crush every single day on a different friend's Facebook, and it started this almost kind of obsessive thing that I immediately, at that age, had to withdraw from. And I knew right away I had to get about it. I had to be done after about 3 months on the kid's Facebook. And then he said, Joey, you had to get the fuck off. And he eventually changed his password, thank God. And then I was isolated in that isolated period, thank God. Pretty much turned me off to social media for a long time until I started going down this podcast and comedy route. And I felt, well, okay, I guess I have to have it to promote the stuff. Right? But I definitely was victim to it. I definitely saw that kind of route, and you see those kind of different rates in people in depression going up even more so now, and it's amplified now. Do you kind of see that? Maybe even saw that at the time when we were coaching together with kids that we taught or coached, and obviously don't know your names, but did you kind of see that in kids and stuff like that?
I can't say I did. It's just not something that would have really been talking to the kids about. I guess my perspective on
right,
it's a little different, just because.
Yeah.
I think how many years do I have on you? How old are you?
I think I am 27. Okay. I just turned 27. You got.
So I got about 2 on you then. 2
on me, yeah.
Yeah, and at least for me, growing up with social media, or when social media was around, I guess when I was growing up, that was back before the ubiquity of cell phones. So I didn't have a smartphone until after I was out of high school.
Oh, really?
People I knew didn't have smartphones while I was in high school, so it just wasn't as accessible.
Yeah.
I had a computer, but I didn't have a laptop, so it was the opportunities to actually get on social media it was more difficult to actually make it happen.
Right.
And a lot more controllable.
Yeah.
So I didn't really grow up with it. It existed, MySpace. I remember MySpace, but I never had one.
It was nothing that ever was I gotta have this.
Yeah, I didn't really have a computer. We had a desktop, but it wasn't something that I remember being on AIM. That was the shit back in the.
Oh yeah. I can get into the AIM talk with you all day.
Radically different, but that was the thing.
Did you ever get into the what's your height, weight, and gender, and then go from there? Getting a little dirt. Okay, no. Never mind. you weren't going and talking with the chat rooms I was in, I guess, when I was 13, 14.
So yeah,
discovering myself.
A little different for me, a lot different for me than for like kids growing up now. Like it's just so ubiquitous. You see 7-year-olds running around with smartphones.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's just more, it's just a part of life. And I think it's how you manage it, how you handle it, and what you take out of it. That's the big key.
Well, that kind of gets us, and that will swing us right into our main topic, man, because we kind of gotten the gist of it, our personal experience with it, but you said it, right? You see 7-year-olds running around with iPhones, and that's kind of part of life, and that kind of puts the stand that why we had this podcast, and to get to the main gist of it is we were having one of our classic brunches, which is what is the building block of our friendship, as we talked about before on this show, and we kind of got into, well, I was, of course, my normal take of alarmness, I think the world's all over, or I think it's near in terms of way social media now directs us, now honestly, as we've shown, it tracks us, and they learn to try to think like us, to sell us ads and things like that. And it's so ingrained in these kids' lives now, right? To where it's that, like you said, that instant need of validation, and you kind of leaned on the side of, well, it's just another thing we need to adjust to, just like when we need to adjust to TV, just like when we need to adjust to even radio, video games, and there's all this, these are going to ruin the future of our kids, and da-da-da-da. And my argument back to you was, well, and now, as I sent you in this outline, was this thing that just dropped on Netflix about a week after our conversation, called Social Dilemma. I'm sure some of you most likely seen this. It's the top trending on Netflix or whatever the hell it is. And basically, essentially, what this thing claims is kind of what my side of the argument was, and that it's, when now you had heard from the creator of YouTube recommendations, Gmail, and the creator of the Facebook like button, a couple other people high up there when Instagram was first developed, so on and so forth, basically saying, well, we don't want to sound alarmist, but it's definitely a concern, saying that, because this thing is designed to keep you scrolling, it is designed to keep you, right there, locked in your screen, to have as much screen time as possible so they can track you, so they can kind of guess what you're thinking next. They have those things that develop it now. And then not only that, Brenden, but it's also leading to, and this is kind of where it's really going to just launch us deep into the water nice and early, buddy, and that is the fact that, it's caused things, and I know you're in agreement with me on this, such as, a Pizzagate, such as, causing somebody to actually go in there with a machine gun and look to make sure he can save the children that the alleged pizza place saved, after you read way too many Reddit forums, right? And then you have, the Social Dilemma documentary, essentially what it's talking about, again, is it leads to those things such as, like, Pizzagate directly affecting the election, directly affecting, protests and different government uprisings and things like that. So my question to you, Brenden, to start us off here, after my loaded rant there, is, one, is it yet another overreaction and people like me are once again being alarmists? And two, more importantly so, I think we both agree that there is some mental effect here. And is it something we can get a handle on, or is it too late?
That's a lot.
You forgot since last time you've been on the show, huh?
I guess just to start with, like, the effects, the reality is that it's not like it's going to go away. So. Right. One way or another, like, we have to learn to live with it. It's not going to wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden Facebook and Instagram and all the social media sites are shut down. So, it's a matter of, like I said, managing it and figuring out how to live with it more so than anything else, just because there's no other option. In terms of just how problematic it is, and
sure.
some of the stuff like Pizzagate and just people delving into these sort of like niche conspiracy theories and all that type of stuff. Obviously, social media and the internet in general makes all of that a lot easier. If you had very, very niche beliefs or stuff like that in the past, it was just hard to find people that also had those beliefs and would support them. But yeah, it's more or less a click away to find, people that are totally supporting you about whatever wacky shit you think is true. But again, I don't know, if you, we can say it's a problem, but at the end of the day, it's not like a problem that you can solve.
Sure.
The internet is what the internet is, so, as long as the internet exists, that's going to be something that comes along with it.
I'm basically asking you to solve world peace here, but
I think it's a matter of how you handle it, and I think the reality is with a lot of the crazy, wacky fucking conspiracy theories like Pizzagate and some of the wild stuff like
Flat Earth
those are just sort of fun. Flat
right.
Earth,
there's Flat Earth conventions now, people that truly believe that.
You can't possibly hurt anybody if you believe Flat Earth is a thing.
Sure.
We can all point and laugh and then move on.
Sure.
At the end of the day, you're not going to go and burn down a building because you believe in the Flat Earth. So that type of stuff. There's plenty of conspiracy theories that I don't really think are a problem. It's fun and funny. You can sort of point and laugh and then move on with your day, just because at the end of the day they're not going to hurt anybody with those beliefs. So I think the ones that are more problematic are the ones that would actually spur somebody to take some sort of hostile action against the subject of those beliefs. At the end of the day, I think the people that believe some of that stuff, I think there's deeper underlying mental issues, and I think all of that just comes back to a need for better mental health care,
right?
More than anything. So I feel like the internet and social media gets they get the blame just because I think it's an obvious outlet for people with some of those issues.
That's a good point.
At the end of the day, I think the focus should be more on mental health broadly in the country and how we better handle that. I think if we had a better handle on that, then a lot of these issues that we see cropping up because of social media and internet would be less of an issue. It's a matter of focus, I think, and I think focusing so much on social media or the internet isn't particularly helpful, just because there's no solution there. It is what it is.
You're just digging yourself. Let's say that you're just. I think we can agree on this point. You're just digging yourself further in the hole when you allow yourself to focus on that. When you allow that to kind of be the mainstream light of your life, right?
Well, it's easy because it's very obvious and it's a lot easier to talk about, which is why I think people would rather focus on that. There's no solution.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to point at Facebook and go, fucking Facebook, this is terrible. What do we do about this? Get Mark Zuckerberg up on Capitol Hill and make him testify, yada yada yada. And it's at the end of the day, unless you're going to ban Facebook and completely get rid of all social media, which I feel like would be far more harmful than keeping it. Then
sure,
then you have
especially at this point,
right? And in this country, at least, I feel like that would be problematic for a number of reasons, but. At the end of the day, I think instead of focusing on that, focus on mental health, just because broadly that'll have a much more positive effect as well. Sure, an outlet, representation of some of these mental health issues that you see that online. But mental health goes way beyond that. It goes way beyond some of the problematic stuff that we see with social media. It runs much deeper than that. So focusing on mental health would, help with the social media aspect and some of the negative outlets that we see there, as well as just generally help with mental health and some of the negative things that we see from people with mental health issues that aren't getting help.
No, that, again, excellent point. That's kind of the way you were swaying me at our good old classic brunch, was exactly that, man. And it's, and this is why I kind of get swayed to your point a little bit, because I think more so, yes, it is an easy outlet. It is an easy, scapegoat by all means, right? I'm 100%, for the most part, on the same page with you there. I think the one thing where it does get people easy to blame, and why sometimes it is a bit necessary to blame it on social media, is the terms of it's just human error, it's human use. And then you can kind of go back and say, yes, well, that's more because of the way the mental awareness is in this country, and the way, especially the way we treat mental health in this country, right? So I think that is a huge thing, and it just ultimately gets me to go back to more, it's just amplifying it. When you have someone that doesn't exactly already understand the mental issues you have, and then you're told, well, this is it, this is it, this is it, this is it, right? And that's what you're brought up to understand, then that's all you're going to think that matters. One, you're never going to find that sense of self, and any mental issues you do have, again, are just going to be more amplified.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely does amplify it. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's any. Again, I don't think there's any resolution of that. I don't think there's anything that we can do to diminish that fact. And at the end of the day, I think tackling underlying causes makes a lot more sense than tackling the symptoms. And I think social media, it definitely caused. I think there are definitely aspects where social media causes mental health issues, and particularly in terms of how people perceive themselves.
Yes, that's exactly. You're reading my mind exactly where I want to go next.
Self-perception, but in terms of, that type of stuff is mostly going to be harmful to that individual. So in terms of things that cause broader harm, I think social media is just more a symptom of that. So the person going on Facebook and posting all their wacky fucking theories, it's not like Facebook didn't make them have those theories. They had them, and Facebook is just giving them an outlet and a way to find support.
To shine light on it, and like you said, and you said a lot when we've had this argument in the past, is to kind of, so they can find their spot. Well, before you didn't really have that spot where you could have that voice and a lot of people would hear you, and now with social media at least gives you that kind of, to find your glove, find your niche, right?
Right. I mean, it just allows you to insulate yourself. The internet and social media just in general allow you to insulate yourself from contrary opinions, and then just to surround yourself with people who believe the same thing. Which, I mean, is obviously not a good thing, but at the end of the day, it sort of is what it is. I don't think that in and of itself is that big of an issue. It's easier now to do than it was 30 years ago, but I mean, again, at the end of the day, I don't think there's any solution there. If somebody's only gonna watch YouTube videos about stuff that they already believe, they're only gonna read articles about stuff they already believe. You're
just fanning the fact, right?
My point is, there's no way to prevent that. They're gonna do what they're gonna do, and if that's what they want to do, as long as people are writing those articles and making those videos, that's what they're gonna be watching and reading. So there's no solution there. And at the end of the day, it's a big issue, but it's not one that we can really do anything about. But I mean, sort of like you said, I think the issue of how social media affects people's perception of themselves, I think is an interesting issue to talk about, just because it is a case where social media is the cause, and it's interesting to think about what could possibly be done to correct that, or to fix immature. And even if it takes time, even if they don't go straight from high school to college like I didn't,
right?
It takes some time for them to figure out what is realistic and what isn't. That's fine. As long as you eventually do grow as a person, you're not 30 years old and imagining that this is a realistic possibility. It's not really an issue. At the end of the day, it should all just be entertainment. If you're just entertained by
right.
I'm just entertained by tuning in and seeing Dan Bilzerian flaunt this supposed rich lifestyle. More power to you.
If you like the dick flaunting, like the dick flaunting.
We're all entertained by stupid shit. There's nothing wrong with it if your thing is Instagram celebrities and models. More power to you. I think that the issue is when that's perceived as some sort of realistic ideal to aspire to.
Right. Well, I want to give you a flip of the coin from because I don't think that is the only demographic, unfortunately, as much as I wish.
Oh yeah, me either. But what I was saying is, if it was limited to that, it's fine.
Right. It is right. Okay. Well, fair. Yeah, fair. And I think that the issue here too is then you get it on the other flip of the coin with 16 or 17-year-old girls or even younger, and to reference this Social Dilemma documentary one time, that is one thing that they talked about a lot, is the depression rates have spiked, and I wanted to talk to you about this particularly as well. The depression rates have spiked. I don't have the exact numbers here in front of me or in my head, but spiked, I believe, about 20 or 30%, which is significantly large. And I'll double check those numbers later if I need to and correct myself here. But about 20 to 30% since 2004. So since social media basically came about, it's rose dramatically. To have and to live up to that kind of self-image of a Kardashian or a Instagram model, as we say, and now you have these like 18, 19, 20-year-old girls that, you know, as soon as they turn that age, they're getting told to have an OnlyFans, and that's exactly what they need to do, and that's how they make money now, right? And then the girl that's encouraged furthermore by 50,000, by them making like upwards of 50,000 a month. Some girls say, right? Now, all power to it, girl. If you're making money, good for you. Do your thing, but at the same time, is that problematic in terms of? Is that what I don't want the message across that that's all you aspire to be?
So I mean, I think there's a couple of things to like consider. Like anytime I hear about like depression rates going up, is that there's I'm sure multiple factors to it. One is just better identification of it than there was 20 years ago.
Sure.
As we become more cognizant of things, then the rates necessarily are going to go up because there's going to be people that were depressed that just weren't identified as such 20 years ago that now are, and that naturally raises the statistics. Outside of that, there's just other reasons like the reality from a kid growing up in the early 2000s to somebody growing up now, I think is so drastically different in terms of just your actual opportunities, your life opportunities after going through the 2008 depression. The sort of changing dynamic in terms of like the American dream. I think there's a lot of reasons that somebody can sort of be disillusioned.
The current situation we're all in, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons that somebody can be disillusioned with what's going on, which is, I mean, obviously this is not to discount sort of the social media aspect, but I think that it just has to be put into context that
absolutely
not like a one-to-one correlation where it's like social media is responsible entirely for this uptick in depression, and then you also have the factor on the other side that I'm sure there are some people that are much happier now because of social media than they would have been 2 decades ago without it.
I think very fair, very well said. You're absolutely correct.
But yeah, I mean, again, at the same time, social media does contribute to that. I don't know. Like, I don't know, like, what really there is to do about it. I mean, in terms of, like, I think there's sort of, like, two sides to it. I think the easier side to think about is sort of the self-image, like, body image in particular dynamic, and the sort of rise in the promotion of sort of the unhealthy and unrealistic body image that you see a lot on places like Instagram, both for women and men, where you can see, your Instagram model who, what they do 24/7 is work out and probably on some juicy vitamins if they're a guy, a little steroids.
Absolutely, little dragon's blood.
Yeah, the woman might not be leading the healthiest lifestyle, might have some issues going on that are allowing her to maintain, a figure that just is not reasonable for a working adult or for just.
We all can't look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. Just remember that.
Right.
As much as every male wants to look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
Well, the reality, like, chances are everybody could, but you just don't have the time. You have other things to do. You have other
and I know I've already said this once on the show, but I absolutely do. Just saying. But anyway, continue.
I mean, people just have other things to do. You have other things that you care about, and it's a limiting factor.
Yeah.
And so you just can't expect to look like these people that spend all of their time, dedicated specifically to their body image. And so I think, that fact just needs to be communicated better as people are growing up. At the end of the day, I don't know that there's anything that you can do to really eliminate, people sort of taking that image, at face value. But I think there just needs to be better communication as people are growing up. The fact that I think stuff like Instagram and the models and that type of stuff, it needs to be viewed the same as we view like a movie. Like nobody goes.
Well said. I love that. That's our first. Can I just say, first piece of advice of the day? First, kind of what we can do to at least control yourselves. Think of it. Just think of social media like a movie. Yeah,
well, I mean, because the way I look at it is nobody goes to the newest Marvel movie, but nobody went to Iron Man in 2008 and saw Tony Stark build some crazy Iron Man suit. It was like, yeah, that's totally like a realistic thing.
That's gonna be me.
Yeah, like no, it's obvious.
You didn't when we went to Tenet a couple weeks back, buddy. You didn't think that we'd one day reverse time together,
right? Yeah. So I mean, like. Everybody understands that what they're watching is fiction, and it's not something like, unless you're watching a biopic or a documentary or something that is obviously rooted in reality. We all understand that what we're saying is a fantasy and it's not something that we can realistically achieve in real life. Even if it's theoretically possible, we understand that there's limiting factors that are probably going to prohibit us from actually reaching that. So I feel like if it was viewed more like that, like more of like a form of entertainment like that, I think that would help a lot of people. But I don't know how you get people to actually, take on that mentality. Just because there's obvious appeal. I mean, the desire. Like again, I can't really knock anybody who looks. The guy who looks at the Instagram model who's all like buff and ripped with the six pack and goes like, "Damn, that's what I want."
Right.
So I can't knock anybody who's like aspires to that, but I think the area to focus on is just just expectations. I think it's managing expectations.
Yeah.
Is the most succinct way that I can put it. I think after that long diatribe.
No, I loved it. No, that was very well said, man, and I think that's an excellent point to continue to bread your butter, but also continue, that's absolutely correct, man, is to keep in perspective, think of it like a movie, and to again, keep it in the realm of reality, simply put, right? Keep it in to make sure that this isn't what I want to achieve. I remember the other goals you have, and to simply put the first point of the day, and I'm going to stick with this, Brenden, because I love it, is think of it like a Avengers movie. Think of it like you're going to see a Christopher Nolan film, right? Like, maybe don't be so confused. Hopefully you understand it a little bit better and you have that good perspective to kind of go back and look and say, okay, yeah, this is not achievable, whatever. At the same time, I respect this or whatever the case is if you're looking at it. But something I also did want to touch upon too is not only to keep it in perspective, but keep it controlled, right? Meaning when you're constantly on there every single day and you're taking a shit and it's on your phone, try to keep it. I know this is the easiest and corniest and most cliche thing to say about social media, Brenden, trust me, but just try to limit yourself. It's easier said than done, but if you truly feel like you do have a problem and it is unhealthy for you and you are kind of looking at it from that unhealthy perspective, part of making it kind of gazing in reality and making it feel more like a Avengers movie is limiting yourself a little bit. Okay, today, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and refrain today. You know what? And then tomorrow, maybe I don't necessarily need to be following 6 Instagram models and their different tips for how to make my back extra shredded. You don't need to do that, buddy. Just simply go ahead and leave it to one, maybe a guy you like, and then apply that in your back workout. But I think it's, again, you got to keep it limited. You got to keep it controlled, or you're gonna go ahead and you could go, God forbid, and shoot up a nice family pizza restaurant. That's the side extreme of the coin, obviously, and like Brenden alluded to earlier, that's clearly somebody with bigger mental issues that honestly was just kind of amplified by that outlet, unfortunately. But I think that's a big key if we are going to go ahead and put you in that social media light, is to keep it gated, keep it a little bit controlled.
Man, I think it's really just a matter of managing your expectations. Really, I mean, like, to me, I look at it, like I said, I look at it like any other form of entertainment. Like, I don't see any reason, like, if somebody wants to get off of work every day and watch TV, more power to you. If you want to get off of work every day and watch movies, more power to you. You want to go for a run, like, do what you want to do. If that means hopping on your phone and scrolling through Instagram forever, like, it's not my cup of tea. It sounds like a nightmare to me, but I mean, if that's what you want to do, if you want to watch some TikToks, all power to you. Like, I think the issue, like, it comes, like, if you can manage expectations from what you're seeing, like, if you're going on and you're just scrolling through a ton of Instagram models, but if you're just like, just like I like admiring the body, it's like, whatever, that's what I'm into. Cool. Yeah. More power to you. I think the issue comes, like, with that type of stuff. Like, I'm using, like, this specific example, but with that type of stuff is when you have somebody who, expect, like, if you basically, like, for the most part, at least, I think more so for women than for men, because so many, like, male Instagram models are on, like, steroids and stuff. It's like, it's literally not achievable. There's nothing there's no amount of time that you can put in where you'll ever get there without also taking steroids.
Free therapy now sponsored by Dragon's Blood. Yeah. Take 3 rounds of Dragon's Blood and be like an Instagram model. Yeah. Just kidding, we don't condone the use of steroids.
Yeah, but even like if you see some model and you're like, hey, I want to get to that. Like, if you're like, I want to get to that in 5 years, well, it's probably doable if you're like consistent. You actually dedicate yourself to it. I'm sure you could actually pull that off. If you want to do it in like 60 days, you're going to be kind of depressed in 60 days when it doesn't happen, because it's just not going to happen. So it's managing expectations. I think it's how you actually view the material, what you're actually getting out of it. I mean, there's a ton of factors that go into it that make it relatively complex to talk about. But
well, to kind of tie that last point up in a bow a little bit, I think you kind of combine both those little pieces of a free therapy advice here, and that is, one, we said, again, make it like a movie. Two, go ahead and try to limit it, but I think managing the expectations kind of combines both. I think that is the appropriate way to look at it, keeping that clean and fresh perspective for just the average kind of person that feels like, hey, maybe I'm a little trapped down by the social media, maybe it's a little too much. Manage those expectations, remind yourself what your goals are and what your reality is, and I think that's been a big theme of free therapy as well. It's just, at the end of the day, identify, and it's harder to do than it's easier said than done, as the cliche goes, but once again, look in that mirror and just say, hey, this is what my goal is every single day, and it's fucking hard and it's corny as hell, but look in the mirror every single day. This is what my goals are. This is what it is, and what is affecting it. Whether it's social media, whether it's, the dude at 7-Eleven that always bothers you every single time you try to buy a six-pack, and he always asks his ID, even though he's seen you every fucking single time, and you got a full-grown beard. I promise you that is not personal whatsoever. But anything like that, you got to look and say, okay, why am I letting that distract me today? And eliminate that. So managing those expectations, but and also at the same time to kind of reminding yourself that it's not always reality, and keeping that clear perspective. But something I want to kind of go into, and that I said we get back to, is, so yes, it's not all social media when you get to these bigger, larger issues. I agree with you completely in terms of when you have things like directly affecting elections, when you have things like, again, government uprisings, when you have different foreign countries causing riots, different protests to bring down their government. While it's not completely social media, what kind of, and you said it already, it gives it an outlet a little bit, but I wanted you to think, now that they have more voices and now that it's on a larger scale to where people can kind of almost incite something from this, is it at least a tool, would you say, to incite these kind of things now, where people take advantage of it? Is that the bigger issue? Or again, is it something that we kind of just have to hope and pray that, we just kind of have to live with now and it's part of life?
So I think talking about like two different things. So like,
sure.
When it comes to like social media being used to sort of facilitate like movements, like I think that's a different thing. Like if you want to stage a protest, or if you're upset with your government or something like that, and you want to rally people, social media is obviously used for that type of thing quite consistently. That's why so many governments have tried to crack down on it. I mean, obviously, as soon as that happens, something else pops up to skirt around those limitations. Sure. I mean, it's quite clearly used for that kind of thing, and I don't really see a problem with that. I mean, using it as a communication tool to help yourself organize, it sounds great to me. So I mean, that's like one side of it, and I think that's great. I mean, obviously you can always have like a negative representation of that.
Sure.
Somebody's using it to
that's a good point.
Organize violence or something negative. But
everything has a two-sided coin to it, right?
Yeah, there's you can use a car to drive to work, or you can use it to run somebody over. It doesn't make cars bad. I mean, that's right. It has to do with the person that's driving it. Same thing with social media. The other aspect, obviously, is people.
You want another one, buddy, or are you good?
I'm good. Right. The other aspect, obviously, is people coalescing around, these sort of negative conspiracy theories or crazy ideologies and that type of stuff. And again, like I said, it facilitates those people coming together. Like, again, in the past, if you were in, rural county, Georgia, and you believed some wacky shit, chances are, you weren't going to find a whole lot of other people unless you were super charismatic and could just talk people into believing, going along with you. You weren't going to find a whole lot of other people that were going to share that belief. And just as a result, it wasn't really allowed to grow or form to the extent that it can now. But again, I feel like that's just sort of the two-sided nature of the internet and anything. I mean, you have the positive expressions and you have the negative expressions, and at the end of the day, it's an issue, but I don't really know Like I feel like it's one that has to be tackled apart from the medium itself. Would
I agree.
Would the opinion change if these people were handing out pamphlets? Like, does that make it better all of a sudden just because they're not using social media and they're handing out pamphlets? Like, oh, it's fine. They believe wacky shit, but at least they're not doing it online. Like, I'm not any like more comforted to hear that the local KKK chapter is handing out pamphlets than they're just talking on their Facebook group.
Right.
Neither one of those.
More than the president telling them to stand back and stand by, or whatever.
Right. But at the end of the day, social media is the current medium to express these beliefs. It definitely makes it a lot easier to propagate them. At the end of the day, I think it makes sense to sort of get to what the root of the beliefs is. Like, why do people believe this in the first place? Obviously, this is only an issue if people believe those things. It's only an issue, Pizzagate's only an issue if people believe it. And if nobody believed it, then social media would be irrelevant in the equation.
And then Best is just another conspiracy theory Reddit forum.
Right. So, so I think just getting to the heart of why people actually believe it. And to some extent, I think there are going to be people that are just incredibly credulous who are just going to believe whatever you tell them just because that's just their personality. And now they can go online and they have a fucking smorgasbord of shit that they can latch onto and believe. And for those people, sure, they're going to believe a lot more garbage than they would have 30 years ago, but at the end of the day, can't really make policy or organize things around sort of the craziest of us, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, people always want to say, well, how did Hitler have followers? Well, there are those types of people out there that will just kind of go ahead and believe it anything at the time. And you can also go into fear mongering, and that's a whole different conversation as well. But people will latch onto those type of opinions and run with it. And you're going to have that regardless, like Brenden said, regardless if they pass out a pamphlet, if they do a whole PDF presentation, or they tweet about it on Twitter. It does not matter, right? So I think we're on the same page there 100%, because I think, one, it's you can't separate. You got to separate social media, and you can't put it into it. You can't scapegoat all on social media, because we still have these issues. We still have these problems, regardless if Twitter, Instagram, Facebook never existed. Right? They'd still be there 100%. There was conspiracy theories before those existed as well. Right? So I think
a big problem is it's visibility. So it's the same idea when people are like, oh my God, it's so much like. Things are so much.
Good to have you back, buddy.
Things are so much more dangerous now than they were like 30 years ago. Oh God, there's just people like killing and like all this stuff. And then you look at the statistics, and we're far, far safer now than we ever have been. But now you can hear about if somebody gets stabbed in Athens, Georgia. You can hear about that tonight, despite living nowhere near that. Right?
So you can hear about that in the next 5 minutes. It happened. Yeah. Right.
So it's just there's a lot more awareness around stuff like that, which makes it seem like more of an issue than it really is. I think with like conspiracy theories and stuff like that, again, I feel like conspiracy theories is a little bit different, just because, like I said, since it's easier to find out about them and easier to find people that support them. I think that definitely will probably increase the numbers of people that actually believe it. But I still think it's the same idea. Like when you hear about like crazy, wacky conspiracy theories, like, well, somebody would have believed something just as wacky prior to the internet. You would have just never heard about it.
Right.
Like to that extent, like.
And would you say the same thing with government movements as well, like, or at least movements in general against governments? At least kind of it would happen regardless, kind of latching on that same idea, and then.
Yeah, so I think that's a little different with stuff like that. Okay. I feel like social media definitely makes it happen more often or with more force than it otherwise would have. Just because it's easy. It's about in terms of movements, about getting people organized, and
right.
Without the internet, that would just be much more difficult, and you're very limited in the number. Like the people that you could actually get would more or less be limited to people in your general vicinity, at least to be able to do it with any sort of speed.
And there's a lot of positive movements that also come from Facebook organizing and Instagram organizing or Twitter organizing, where the case may be, and a lot of negatives as well towards that.
Right, yeah, and I mean, again, we're just always typically going to focus on the negative. Like, you don't get a news story about somebody helping the little old lady across the street. It's nice.
And helping her.
That's not the type of thing you report on. You report on the guy who steals a purse, right? So.
Right. Or you don't comment on the guy that saved the 20 children from a burning building versus the guy that burned the 20 children in the building. Right. To go on a darker example, I don't know why my mind went there, but anyway, I just always saw that as the corny cliche line that saved 20 children in a wheelchair from a burning building. The cliche hit on your crush line. But anyway, man. So no, I think you're hitting a lot of fantastic points again, and that's why I wanted to have you back on this show. Because I think you address the whole circumference, right? I think that's a big problem a lot of times when we're addressing at least these bigger issues. And I'll go back to the kind of smaller mental health issues as a whole here in a second. But just to kind of go off the normal, like we already have been, the normal free therapy kind of vibe, and that is. When it comes to these bigger problematic issues, it's layered. There's a whole lot more in terms, and I'm going back now to what we were talking about with the conspiracy theories and things like that. There's usually a whole lot more layered there in terms of the psyche that was already going to kind of springboard, and you have to look again at that whole entire apple. You can't just look at a slice, right?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, the problem with a lot of issues like mental health and like social media is that they're more complex than I think people want to actually deal with. Everybody wants solutions to be fast and easy. Like nobody wants
the beautiful human flaw, baby.
Yeah, nobody really wants to deal with stuff when it's going to be super complex and time consuming. And I think with stuff like mental health in particular, it's not something that is super quick to deal with. It's complex. It's difficult to deal with. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes resources, and that's a lot. It's a lot more difficult to get people to actually want to deal with that or support that, especially if there are other ways to deal with it that are much quicker. And you see that with mental health all the time, and you see that with social media and how we treat social media, where we just want to drag Zuckerberg or whoever up onto the hill, have them testify, and then we can pat ourselves on the back for a job and move on without having actually done anything. But you just feel better about yourself. Same thing with mental health. I mean, I always liken it to giving the homeless guy like $10 and somebody's like, hey, he's just gonna go buy alcohol, and that's probably the reason why he's out here to begin with. It's like, yeah, well, he deserves that. He deserves that much. Well, it's not helping him though.
Right.
You feel better about yourself, but at the end of the day, if you actually care about the issue, why do something that is effectively nothing? No, I think it's.
Why not buy him a warm meal instead or something, right? Or if you really want to be positive and help,
or donate your time or donate your money to an organization that's actually going to, do something to pull them off the streets and, do something that'll actually be meaningful rather than something that's quick and easy, but at the end of the day doesn't really do a lot to achieve what you say is your desired end, which is, that person not being homeless.
That puts a beautiful bow on it, man. I really think it does. I mean, to kind of put the final free therapy traditional touch on here, I like to do, again, like we already said, if you're just day to day, a little bit worried about your social media consumption, a little bit worried about maybe I'm into this too much, or maybe it is making you happy, and maybe you are really enjoying it, and maybe you're saying I could maybe still get a little bit of time off it. I think the simple thing is just manage your expectations. No, you're not, your net worth isn't $1 million if you have 1 million followers. Just remember that. You're not, you haven't made it just because you rented a mansion for an hour to take pictures. Just remember that. And, it's keeping your goals and yourself in perspective ultimately, and not letting who you truly are for the ultimate season 2 and kind of season 1 motto is just, it's difficult as hell, but peel off those layers and find out who you truly are, whether it's whether going through that is talking to somebody or just being honest with yourself. Give it a fucking shot. It's hard as hell sometimes, but I'll tell you, it feels pretty goddamn good when you actually do it. But Brenden, my final question to you, someone who I think, since I've known him, has always unequivocally been his self, and a very great self. I do say that for the last butter on your bread, buddy, for the last brown nose as deep as I can get in there. Now it's getting weird. I don't care. With that being said, my last question to you is what is your kind of bow that you want to leave everybody with? What is your kind of your final cherry on the sundae you want to put here to kind of let people know?
The only other thing that I would say, particularly in terms of like social media and stuff, is that I think people just need to think about why, like what is it about like having followers and that type of stuff and having this sort of validation from people that you don't know that matters to you. Like at the end of the day, I think it's important that, like getting validation and, having those relationships with your peers and your friends and that type of stuff is clearly very important for a whole host of reasons, mental health being amongst them. But for somebody who is really, desperate to have, a ton of followers, a ton of people looking at them, that type of thing, what is it about, introspect, what is it about you that craves, that sort of validation from people who at the end of the day don't actually care about you? And I think it's something to consider, something to figure out for yourself if you're one of those people. But I think it's a pretty important thing to consider, just because if you can't come up with an answer, if it's not something clear cut, like, I'm trying to make this my business, like makes sense. But if it's something else, if you can't really figure out what it is, then it's something to consider. And if you are unhappy, then that could be the root.
Very well said. I think that's a perfect way to end the show. I have nothing to add on that, except for please catch me and Brenden's 6-hour podcast, Political Debates Only, where we also always end on 3 hours on religion. So enjoy that, coming very soon. Brenden, thank you very much for coming on, man. I always love having you on the show for that kind of good perspective, as you always able to keep it even keel and always kind of look at that larger picture, as sometimes it's easy to kind of get caught in an easy nook or cranny, right? So I appreciate you coming on. You're coming back on again. You are now a regular guest. Congratulations. How do you feel?
Fantastic.
No, man, I do appreciate you coming on. You will be on again. We'll do brunch soon, maybe sometime next week. I got to run after the show here, but we will do something next week if you're not working a 90 million hour work week. So with that being said, please do go to www.4cr.studio to go and inquire if you want to be part of the family that is Four Corners Studio, or go ahead and DM us at Four Corners Radio right now to be part of the family that is Free Therapy, face of the franchise, bread and butter, last nice guys, hooping and hollering, five holers, degenerates are us, name to be changed soon, most likely, Brenden, a thoughtology, new one, Brenden, that check out, learn some lessons, then go check them all out right now, be part of the fantastic family. I don't know why you haven't already. This has been Free Therapy. As always, have a fantastic time, and remember, why pay $100 for free therapy? Or why pay $100 for therapy when you get Little Joe monthly, bi-monthly now for free? But of course, do seek experts if you actually do need help. We out.